Even just while these cars banging outside, all this candy paint. This why, baby. We in Screw shop, screwed up records and tapes. I'm fit to go find this boy Screw right now, man. Straight up, let's do this, man.
This is the Screw Shop. You know what I'm saying? Welcome to the home of the Screw, Texas. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like an underground radio station. You know what I'm saying?
For the streets.
For the streets.
Screw put it down, man. I met Screw back in like 91, 92 when we was like the first ones to really freestyle on Screw tape. Me and Fat Pat, we was going hard freestyle on Screw tape. And we just put it down, man. Screw this. It's like we went platinum underground on Screw, you know what I'm saying? Not knowing that would help us later in the real reality of the sales in the stores, you know what I'm saying? All that really helped. It just laid out for a lot. It helped Keke them out, Pokey out. It helped all of us out really just going platinum underground, you know what I'm saying?
I'm just like a big promotional person, you know what I'm saying? To help everybody in this rap game to get their music played. Cause like if the radio don't play it, I'ma play it. If it's real and it got a meaning, you gonna hear it. I bet you gonna hear a bunch of trucks coming down the street, slow down, and I'm gonna do it my way.
Banging,
you know
boys, knocking.
For real.
We had screwed up records and tape boys out here with candy cars, Lexus, and see, this is what I'm talking about right here, baby. This is what I'm talking about right here. That boy ESG right here. Yeah, baby. This is the man right here, swinging and banging himself. You know, how you doing, baby?
Man, I'm lovely, man. Out here shining the ground, out of my partner Kojak, COD. Hey, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
We just talking about how to stop putting it down, bro.
Man, the stop putting it down. That's what I want to talk about. E, let's get real. Let's take it back, baby. Let's talk about your early days flowing.
All right, 93.
Smithville to Houston, 1986. 2 hours. Smithville to Houston, Texas. If you stop for a meal along the way. Truckers know all the good spots, and so did Screw. He'd made a lot of trips back and forth to the city over the years, but the farther his dad drove them away from the country, the heavier this particular trip out of town became for Screw. He was leaving behind all of his friends in Smithville and plenty of cousins, and Z-Force crew, who were both. Of course, he was going to miss Shorty Mac and Larry B, but also DW Sound and Dario Butts, each of whom opened a new channel for him into the world of music, on his instrument of choice. On the drive, they passed through LaGrange, where Butts worked and where DW played in the clubs, and where DW had told Screw about the records that made people go wild on the dance floor. There was excitement for Screw going to the big city. He couldn't know then he'd left Smithville for good. But the change of scenery went way deeper than music. The last several years had been all about the women in his life. His mother, his grandmother, his older sister, and his niece Shameka, who was only 6 months old when he left. Suddenly disconnected from them all when he left in that truck, he wasn't going to be growing up under the same roof as them anymore, or even in the same city. And he had only just become Uncle Earl. His mother did want him to have a father figure, but Screw couldn't have known what that was going to be like. For his first few months in Houston, they stayed at his dad's girlfriend Patricia's house, where Screw shared a room with her 2 sons. The older brother, Russell, had just graduated high school then and was getting ready to go to college for business at Texas Southern University. During his time living there, Screw kept his headphones on and didn't say much, but Russell had been around Screw's dad enough by then to get to know him. Russell Washington, I always liked Mr. Robert. My mother only dated 2 guys that I really liked, but Mr. Robert was always cool to me. He was like my stepdad, but he was actually an old player. I think she had met him at bingo. My mom played bingo real heavy, and Mr. Robert played bingo real heavy. He shot pool, he played dice. He was just out hustling, and my mom. I thought they were a terrible match, honestly, because you can't have the same vice as your mate. My mother is a gambler, and he was. I was like, where they get that money? South Side. Not long after Screw's arrival in Houston, Robert and Patricia split up, and in an early example for Screw of how everyone in town was connected, he would end up working with Russell's record label years later. They moved out of her house and closer to where Robert worked, between Highway 288 and the Gulf Freeway, way over near Hobby Airport. Smithville covers about 4 square miles. Greater Houston is nearly 10,000, and by 1986 it had surpassed Detroit and Philadelphia to become the 4th largest city in the country. There was a lot of space to get used to, and it was a fraught moment for moving to a big city in the United States. The era of crack cocaine was in full swing, and socioeconomic conditions in the city combined with the imbalance created by the drug hit the city's poorest neighborhoods the hardest. The oil bust of early 1986 sent Houston into a recession, and its population growth had slowed right along with the economy. The job market was buoyed in part by medicine and NASA, but this was also the same year the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster happened, so a dark cloud still very much hung over Space City. On other fronts, Houston was in better shape. The Rockets and University of Houston alum Akeem Olajuwon made the NBA Finals, and Jose Cruz and Billy Hatcher nearly took the Astros to the World Series for the first time. The Texas Medical Center had received an influx of cash and was building up along Main Street in the area southwest of Herman Park, and the city's spirits had been lifted somewhat when French electronic musician Jean-Michel Jarre's Rendezvous. Houston concert drew over 1 million people in and around downtown to watch the fireworks and light show and see saxophonist Kirk Whalum, formerly of TSU's Ocean of Soul marching band, play on The Last Rendezvous in place of astronaut Ron McNair, who was killed aboard the Challenger. So a lot of things were happening in Houston that year, including in Screw's part of town along the South Loop. Just off 610 on South Main was Carrington's, Caro's, the already legendary billiards bar and nightclub where you could hear DJs throwing down whether you were partying or just shooting pool. And plenty of those DJs bought their records and tapes just a couple of blocks away at Soundwaves, right around the corner from the storied Rhinestone Wrangler nightclub. The Astrodome was just on the other side of Kirby Drive, with the amusement park Astro World across the freeway, always shining, morning or night, not far. Away was King's Flea Market, Ray Barnett's Cinder Club, McGregor Park, King Leo's, and Blast Records and Tapes. Screw couldn't see it all. He wouldn't even have known where to look, but an entire culture was blooming all around him in Houston. By the time 15-year-old Robert Earl Davis Jr. rolled into town with his father in the summer of 1986, they were already calling him DJ Screw back home, but he was still unknown in the big city. In the handful of years since his family had left Houston for the country, hip-hop had convincingly broken through to the mainstream, and local scenes were developing far outside of New York, even in the Bayou City. In fact, Houston had plenty on the fire. Screw knew that from the radio tapes he'd heard back in Smithville, but now he was going to be there. And it was right when a juggernaut of young local artists were making a shift out of the clubs and into making records. A scene that had been building for years was coming into its own, and Screw arrived just in time to hear it. Night people. Depending on how you start the clock, that is, unless you go back to the last poets, Gil Scott-Heron, Melvin Van Peebles, or Pigmeat Markham, rap music started coming out on vinyl in 1979. The first records recognized as hip-hop, Fatback Band's King Tim III, Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight, weren't truly representative of the genre because so much of what was going on in New York, Cold Crush Brothers, Grandmaster Flash, and the Furious Five, was still happening in the clubs. In Houston, a lot of what passed for hip-hop on the radio was really R&B. The clubs were how the music was going to reach the people. MC Wicked Cricket. Most clubs wasn't clubs back in the 70s. All them were jip joints. They was cafes. The cafes was considered clubs. They didn't know about clubs. They didn't really know nothing about big club scenes down here until they seen that shit in New York. Down here it was just cafes, because this was like a cowboy area. You know, everybody would be like, go Western. You wore cowboy hats, you went to the parade downtown, you could wear your little guns and stuff. I mean, it was a cowboy area in the beginning. They was proud of it. Tommy Langston, Stick Horse Records. Although it came around 79, 80, hip-hop was not big in Houston at all. We sold a lot of R&B, and when I say R&B, I really do mean rhythm and blues as opposed to just the word R&B. Rhythm and blues with blues. And this was really even prior to Zydeco becoming a big thing in the greater Houston area. This was in the early stages of that, and hip-hop was really just taking a footing. Because I remember a heck of a lot of customers. They had a definite hatred for hip-hop at that time. Quite a few customers who came to it had a big hatred for it, didn't want to hear anything about that hippity-hop stuff or whatever you call it. Screw had arrived during the battle rap era, when young Houstonians were rapping against each other in the streets and the hallways of their schools, working their way up to the clubs. Rap battles were the first place they got to feel hip-hop in a communal setting where the energy of the music could come to life. Black music, black voices, black stories, making black history in the process. So much of the hip-hop experience then was wrapped up in the stories of New York and Los Angeles, but in Houston, they had something to say, and the stage was set for that to happen long before hip-hop. Ray Barnett's clubs had been the hottest places in town for Houston's black nightclub-going clientele since the late 60s. There was the Cinder Club, Baby Grand, Big Apple, New York, Fantasia 5000, Screaming Eagle, and eventually Club New Jack Midnight Hour, which would be where Barnett and Screw connected. DJs were playing all kinds of music in his clubs, but mostly they were the place to be. By the time hip-hop came around, Barnett had been in business for over a decade, coming up alongside radio personality and KCOH DJ Skipper Lee Frazier, who was managing Archie Bell and the Drells and produced their 1968 hit Tighten Up. Barnett and Frazier's era was taking off as Don Roby's Duke Peacock empire came to a close. And though they were in different branches of the industry, with Roby releasing records and Barnett running nightclubs, though his partner, a young Kansas City native named Charles Bush, would go on to produce a number of records. They were equally instrumental in the development of Houston's musical legacy. Barnett started his enterprise in the late 60s, taking on Bush as a protege, even sending him to business school, moving through trends in Houston nightlife with clubs all over Lower Third Ward that became seminal gathering spots through the decades, no doubt influenced by Roby's Bronze Peacock Dinner Club era. MC Wicked Cricket, Ray Barnett already had a stack of clubs that catered to the older people. The club scene been going on down here since they used to have the old Majestic Theater. That's how far back they had clubs jumping. He had clubs when people were still going to the drive-in. Ray Barnett is the original godfather of Houston. He had at least 10 different custom-made cars that I seen him in. You know, he had after hours, he was at all of the Rockets games. All of the original Rockets. Bobby Joe Reed and Alan Leavell and all them. They used to be at his spot around the 70s. That's when Ray Barnett was the main star. He had all the bread. He just didn't know how to keep his books. Charles Bush kept his books. Darrell Scott. Ray Barnett was up and down OST, Old Spanish Trail, which was known as the Houston Strip. That's where all of the clubs were. And in all of the clubs, they had a theme behind it. And that was all behind Ray Barnett's brilliant thinking, man. He was a genius. But then, for some folks, they thought he was crazy. They didn't understand Ray Barnett. And the reason they didn't understand him is because he was a walking enigma, is what he was. He spoke in codes. He spoke metaphorically. If you didn't understand those codes and those riddles and how he spoke metaphorically, you would miss what he was trying to say to you. You would have to be a thinking person to pick up on what he was talking about when he would say some of the things that he would say. And that's where that old saying comes from. If you swing, you gon' ride. Curtis Blow. What I remember is back in those days, Houston was a hick city. It was Texas. When you thought of Texas, you thought of the cowboy hats and horses and steers and all of that. Farmland, chickens. But it had some urban qualities to it. I remember playing Struts in 1980. It was packed, sold out. It's hard to explain the energy and vibe and spirit around the club and around Houston, but the energy seemed as if it were an urban town. During that time, my whole thing was crowd response, and I was a master at call and response. My show, my live performances would live or die if the crowd was not participating. When I'm like, say ho, and they say, ho, if it's maybe about 25 people and there are 500 people there, that's not cool. But the energy of Houston, I just remember the crowd being very, very loud and having 1,200, 1,500 people. Everybody scream. You could hear that miles away. That was one of the things that stood out about Houston. They were always ready to party.
This is what my swing bring the goddamn thing say.